These are the last frames before the disease finally took them. Yul Brynner appears in one of his final photographs at a New York studio in October 1985, gaunt and bald, recording a television message that asked viewers not to smoke. He died on October 10, 1985 at age 65 of lung cancer at New York Hospital, only months after closing a long Broadway run of The King and I performed while already ill. The PSA he taped was released after his death, his own filmed voice telling the country in plain terms that the disease had been caused by his cigarettes. Andy Kaufman is photographed in early 1984 looking unrecognizably thin, his head shaved and his face drawn from chemotherapy at a clinic in the Philippines, where he had traveled for psychic surgery. He died on May 16, 1984, at age 35 of large cell lung cancer at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, a rare diagnosis in a man who had never smoked. Because his comedy had been built on elaborate hoaxes, many fans refused to accept the death as real, a rumor he could no longer either confirm or deny. Ingrid Bergman appears in one of her last public photographs at her London home in the summer of 1982, smiling from a chair with her right arm visibly swollen from years of breast cancer treatment. She died on August 29, 1982 at age 67 on the evening of her own birthday, the disease having returned after a long remission and an earlier mastectomy. Her final role as the Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir in a television film had been completed only months before her death. Donna Reed is photographed in late 1985, frail and pale, at her California home in one of her final still images released to the public. She died on January 14, 1986 at age 64 of pancreatic cancer in Beverly Hills, only 3 months after her diagnosis. The actress, beloved as the wife of George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, had recently been replaced on the primetime series Dallas, an exit she had publicly resented and was suing to reverse at the time of her death. Gilda Radner appears in one of her final photographs in early 1989 at her Los Angeles home, smiling beside her husband Gene Wilder, her hair gone and her face changed by months of treatment. She died on May 20, 1989, at age 42, of ovarian cancer at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, having spent her last years writing a memoir of her diagnosis and founding a support community for other patients. The disease had been mistaken for chronic fatigue and digestive problems for nearly a year before doctors finally identified it. Michael Landon is photographed in the summer of 1991 at his California ranch, gaunt but smiling, in a series of images released to mark his television interview about the diagnosis. He died on July 1, 1991 at age 54 of pancreatic cancer at his home in Malibu, less than 3 months after announcing the illness to the public. He had appeared on The Tonight Show in May, joking openly about death and treatment, a final television moment watched by tens of millions of viewers. Robert Reed appears in his final photographs in late 1991, thin and tired, at his home in Pasadena where he was cared for in his closing months. He died on May 12, 1992 at age 59 of colon cancer in Pasadena, California, with HIV listed as a contributing factor on his death certificate. The actor, forever remembered as the father in the Brady Bunch, had kept both his diagnosis and his private life almost entirely out of the press during his career. Sam Walton is photographed in March 1992 in a Bentonville, Arkansas store accepting the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George H. W. Bush from a wheelchair, his frame visibly shrunken. He died on April 5, 1992 at age 74 of multiple myeloma at the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences Hospital only weeks after this ceremony. He had founded Walmart from a single discount store in 1962 and built it into the largest retailer in the United States by the time of his death. Frank Zappa appears in one of his final public photographs in September 1993, performing on a Frankfurt stage with the Ensemble Modern, conducting his own orchestral compositions, his hair gone gray and his body painfully thin. He died on December 4, 1993 at age 52 of prostate cancer at his home in Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles, 2.5 years after the diagnosis. He had built a recorded catalog of more than 60 albums spanning rock, jazz, and avant-garde orchestral work, much of it released on his own labels to keep control of the music. Vincent Price is photographed in 1992 promoting his last film, Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands, his tall frame stooped and his voice rasping but still recognizable. He died on October 25, 1993 at age 82 of lung cancer and complications of Parkinson's disease at his home in Los Angeles. The actor, who had built a career on gothic horror films through the 50s and 60s, had also assembled one of the country's most respected private collections of fine art, much of it later given to Yuba College in California. Henry Mancini appears in one of his last photographs in early 1994 at his Holmby Hills home in Los Angeles, sitting at a piano having recently completed scoring on the Broadway-bound version of Victor Victoria. He died on June 14, 1994 at age 70 of pancreatic cancer at home, only 3 months after the diagnosis. The composer of the Pink Panther theme in Moon River had won 4 Academy Awards and 20 Grammys, working with everyone from Audrey Hepburn to Blake Edwards. Jessica Tandy is photographed in spring 1994 at her summer home in Easton, Connecticut, white-haired and frail in a chair on the porch, in a portrait released after her death. She died on September 11, 1994, at age 85 of ovarian cancer at home with her husband Hume Cronin beside her. 5 years earlier, at age 80, she had become the oldest person ever to win the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Driving Miss Daisy. Mickey Mantle appears in one of his final photographs from his hospital bed at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas in July 1995, gaunt and unshaven, holding a news conference after his liver transplant. He died on August 13, 1995 at age 63 of liver cancer that had quickly spread following the surgery. The Yankees center fielder used his final weeks to warn the public about the cost of his own drinking, urging young men in plain words not to copy the way he had lived. Carl Sagan is photographed in late 1996 at his home in Ithaca, New York, thin and pale but smiling, in one of the last images released by his family. He died on December 20, 1996 at age 62 of pneumonia following a long battle with myelodysplastic syndrome, a form of bone marrow cancer that had required 3 transplants. The astronomer who had introduced millions of viewers to the universe through his Cosmos television series had used his final months to complete a book on skepticism and science. Linda McCartney is photographed in late 1997 in Arizona, where she and her family had moved during her final treatment, in a series of images taken by her husband Paul. She died on April 17, 1998 at age 56 of breast cancer at the McCartney Ranch outside Tucson. The photographer and musician who had stood at her husband's side through Wings in a long second career had become one of the most public advocates for vegetarian cooking in the United Kingdom, her cookbooks selling in the millions. DeForest Kelley is photographed in late 1998 at the Motion Picture and Television Country House in Woodland Hills, California, where he spent his final months under round-the-clock medical care. He died on June 11, 1999 at age 79 of stomach cancer at the same facility. The actor who had played the Star Trek Dr. Leonard McCoy for 30 years across television and film had reportedly told visitors near the end that he was content and that the role had given him a long life he could not have imagined as a young man. Charles M. Schultz is photographed in early 2000 at his Santa Rosa, California studio, drawing what would be the final Daily Peanut strip, his right hand visibly trembling from chemotherapy. He died on February 12, 2000 at age 77 of colon cancer at his home in Santa Rosa on the eve of the publication of his last Sunday strip. He had drawn nearly 18,000 individual Peanuts comics over 50 years, never using an assistant for a single panel of art or lettering. Jason Robards appears in his final photographs from December 2000 at Yale New Haven Hospital in Connecticut, where he had been admitted for the last time. He died on December 26, 2000 at age 78 of lung cancer in New Haven, complications of decades of heavy smoking and drinking. The 2-time Academy Award winner, married briefly to Lauren Bacall, had built a long career as one of the great American interpreters of Eugene O'Neill on the New York stage. George Harrison is photographed in October 2001 at the New York hospital, where he was receiving radiation treatment, his last public still image leaving in dark glasses and a cap. He died on November 29, 2001 at age 58 of lung cancer that had metastasized to his brain at a private home borrowed from Paul McCartney in Los Angeles. The youngest of the Beatles, the so-called quiet one, had survived a stabbing attack in his English home only 2 years earlier, the assault widely believed to have weakened him before the cancer. Anthony Quinn is photographed in early 2001 at his home in Bristol, Rhode Island, white-bearded and frail, in a portrait taken by one of his children. He died on June 3, 2001 at age 86 of pneumonia and respiratory failure linked to throat cancer at Rhode Island Hospital. The Mexican-born actor who had won 2 Academy Awards and famously danced through the closing scenes of Zorba the Greek had still been painting and sculpting almost daily until weeks before the end. Jack Lemmon appears in his final public photograph in March 2001 at the American Film Institute tribute to his frequent co-star Walter Matthau, hosting the evening with a shaved head and a visibly thinner frame. He died on June 27, 2001 at age 76 of bladder cancer at the University of Southern California Medical Center. The 2-time Academy Award winner had remained close friends with Matthau until his partner's death the previous year, and he was buried with a headstone reading Jack Lemmon in, a final actor's joke. Milton Berle is photographed in late 2001 at his Beverly Hills home in a wheelchair in one of his last public still images. He died on March 27, 2002 at age 93 of colon cancer at home, having outlived nearly every comedian of his generation. Uncle Milty, whose cross-dressing slapstick had made him so central to early television that families bought their first sets to watch him, had quietly carried the cancer diagnosis for over a year before his death. Warren Zevon is photographed in May 2003 on the set of The Late Show with David Letterman, where he appeared as the night's only guest, performing 3 songs from his final album. He died on September 7, 2003 at age 56 of mesothelioma at his home in Los Angeles just over a year after his diagnosis. He had refused treatment that might have shortened his ability to write, and his last record, recorded as he was dying, would win 2 posthumous Grammys. Anne Bancroft is photographed in mid-2004 at a charity event in New York with her husband Mel Brooks, her last documented public appearance before withdrawing from view. She died on June 6, 2005 at age 73 of uterine cancer at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. The Academy Award winner for The Miracle Worker, forever known as well as the older woman in The Graduate, had hidden the diagnosis even from close friends, and the news of her death came as a shock to most of Hollywood. Don Knotts is photographed in 2005 at a Hollywood event, thin and slow but still smiling beside his daughter in one of his final public appearances. He died on February 24, 2006 at age 81 of lung cancer at Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. The 5-time Emmy winner for his role as Deputy Barney Fife on The Andy Griffith Show had remained close friends with Griffith for over 50 years, his old co-star reportedly at his bedside in the final hours. Tom Snyder is photographed in late 2006 at his San Francisco home, gaunt and shaven-headed, in a portrait released through his website to update fans on his treatment. He died on July 29, 2007 at age 71 of complications from chronic lymphocytic leukemia at the same home. The late-night television interviewer whose smoke-shrouded Tomorrow Show had introduced punk acts to American audiences in the 70s had been retired but writing regular online dispatches about his illness until weeks before his death. Sidney Pollack is photographed in late 2007 in New York, having continued to appear in supporting acting roles even after announcing his diagnosis. He died on May 26, 2008 at age 73 of stomach cancer at his home in Pacific Palisades, California. The Academy Award-winning director of Out of Africa, Tootsie, and 3 Days of the Condor had quietly produced a final film, Michael Clayton, only months before his own death, earning a posthumous nomination for Best Picture. Pete Postlethwaite is photographed in late 2010 at his home in Shropshire, England, frail but bearded and smiling for a series of family portraits. He died on January 2, 2011 at age 64 of pancreatic cancer at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. The English character actor who had been called the best actor in the world by Steven Spielberg had been quietly fighting the disease for years while continuing to work, completing roles in The Town and Inception in his final months. Larry Hagman appears in his last filmed scenes for the 2012 revival of Dallas, returning to the role of J.R. Ewing in his 70s for a season he would not live to see broadcast in full. He died on November 23, 2012 at age 81 of complications from throat cancer at Medical City Hospital in Dallas. The son of the actress Mary Martin had played the most famous television villain of the 80s through the original Dallas, the show that had made an international audience ask who shot J.R. Robin Gibb appears in one of his final photographs at his English country home in late 2011, painfully thin in a hospital bed surrounded by his family, smiling weakly for the camera. He died on May 20, 2012 at age 62 of colorectal cancer at the London Clinic. The middle Gibb brother, two-thirds of the Bee Gees vocal trio whose harmonies had defined Saturday Night Fever in the late 70s disco era, had been working on a classical requiem during his final illness. Andy Williams is photographed in late 2011 at his Moon River Theater in Branson, Missouri, the venue he had built and run for nearly 2 decades, in one of his final stage appearances. He died on September 20, 2012 at age 84 of bladder cancer at his home in Branson. The crooner whose smooth voice had carried Moon River and a long network variety show through the 60s had announced his diagnosis from his own theater stage the year before, telling fans he intended to keep singing. Olivia Newton-John appears in her final photographs in 2022 at her Southern California ranch, smiling beside her husband, in family images released by her estate after her death. She died on August 8, 2022 at age 73 of metastatic breast cancer at her home after living with the disease through 3 diagnoses across 30 years. The Australian singer and Grease star had founded a cancer wellness center in Melbourne and had used decades of her later career to fundraise for the research that came too late to save her. Roger Ebert is photographed in early 2013 at his Chicago apartment, his lower jaw long since removed by surgery, smiling without speech beside his wife in a portrait released with his memoir. He died on April 4, 2013 at age 70 of recurrent salivary gland cancer at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The Pulitzer-winning film critic who had reviewed thousands of movies on television with Gene Siskel had kept writing throughout his decade of treatment, publishing more reviews after losing his voice than he had during the years he could still speak. 35 cameras, 35 frames, each one a still image taken in the weeks or months before the disease the world calls cancer arrived at the end of the story. Some smiled, some looked away. All of them carried, by the time the shutter closed, a quiet and unmistakable understanding of what was coming and what would not.